everyone, welcome to Pipes, Tobacco, and Whiskey. So I just got back in time for it to start raining. And it was raining like my daddy used to say, like a cow pissing on a flat rock, I tell you. We are just getting all sorts of weather right now. But I wanted to take the time to say hello to you guys and show you a video that I recorded while we were at Muletown Pipe Show. This is Jeremy Reeves doing a session on tobacco blending, and basically what it is he's showing us the process that he went through in creating the Muletown mixture that was available there at the Muletown show. But there's some really interesting things in this video that I never knew and that I found very interesting and creative. The way they blend their tobaccos, how they make their casings and toppings, and how everything is done at the C&D factory. So this video is for you guys that didn't get a chance to go to Muletown. I hope you enjoy it. Now there is some background noise because this was done in the same room that all the vendors were at. So you might get some background noise. Listen closely because Jeremy has some really great things to share with us.
Yeah, like Pete said, long-time friendship between Cornell Diehl and the Briarworks fellas. We really got to know each other, put together the Briarworks blends, and then they opened up this workshop and the retail location. I put together a blend to do a blending demonstration like this. Was the very first time that I'd ever done a blending demonstration. And at the time, we just named the blend 511 North Main after the address was replaced. But when they then decided to do the Muletown show, he was like, hey, can we do that blend as like the Muletown mixture and have that just available at the show? So this is basically the blend that I put together for it, and the tints that we have available over at the Cornell Diehl table. It is a Virginia blend. It is a pretty complex blend with a bunch of different kinds of Virginia and a very small amount of Perique. So we'll start off with a base of Canadian bright Virginia. You can see that light golden color, but with Virginias, that light color is a good indication of high sugar, lower nicotine. The darker Virginias tend to have the opposite. So the darker the Virginia, the lower the sugar content, and the higher the nicotine. It comes from upper stalk positions, you get those darker colors, and mid-stalk positions that you're going to get these brighter colors that have a little more sugar, a little less nicotine, a little less oil. So this makes up the majority of the blend, about 75% of the blend. Whenever I'm blending, it's all about even distribution and economy of motion, and I'm not ever trying to crush or crunch the tobacco. Real loosey-goosey with the fingers and light, easy movements to kind of matriculate the smaller quantities through whatever the base is. So in this case, the base is bright Virginia, 23-24% sugar, only about 2.5% nicotine. The next thing that we're going to add is about 4 ounces of this 2015 red Virginia. You can see the color difference here. So the bright, you've got this really light sort of hay-like flavor and almost like a croissant sort of sweetness. The deeper redder Virginia almost brings in a tone of like molasses. This again is from 2015 crop. This is actually the same red Virginia that we used for the original run of Carolina Redwood. when I'm adding smaller quantities is I want to get as even a layer over the top of whatever the base is as possible. Next we've got Red Virginia Cavendish. This is a 2017 Red Virginia that we have steamed to get this darker color. Caramelizes the sugars that are there, removes some of the nicotine, and it makes this leaf kind of produce a thicker, cloudier smoke. It has a really nice flavor still, but it adds a little bit of a roasty, toasty kind of element to the Virginia. Next we've got some Red Virginia, again the 2017 Red Virginia, but you can really see the difference in the color between the Red Virginia Cavendish and what we've done here. We lightly steamed it and then pressed it and sliced it. Offering an opportunity for the leaf to ferment a bit, and we've added a small amount of casing, a little bit of honey, and actually some tea made from whole cloves and allspice. It adds a really nice, like, spicy sort of element to the mouthfeel, and particularly through the nose. It also brings out a lot of the tangy, tart flavors that Red Virginia can have. Got a similar sort of product that, believe it or not, this is actually bright Virginia that has been steamed and pressed, and you can see the much higher sugar content has yielded a much more caramelized color. Again, some really nice tartness that comes from this. We leave it a little chunkier because of the sugar content. It presses and adheres much more readily. It also adds an opportunity for there to be something that, rather than burning at the same rate as all the rest of these finer cuts, it's actually going to slowly smolder and just sort of imbue its essence through the course of the bowl. So you're going to kind of get this added tanginess and tartness that is slowly smoldering throughout the bowl as you smoke. And lastly, Pure St. James Parish Perique. This is a really, really labor-intensive, incredible tobacco that is processed for us by a farm down in St. James Parish. From seed to final product in the barrel is all carried out by Perique. And these guys plant, they sucker, they harvest, they do everything by hand. It is a labor of love, and it is a labor for sure. Third generation Perique growing farm, and the tobacco is planted, grown, it's harvested, it's cured in a barn, air cured, and then after the air curing process, then break all the leaves off of the stalk and tie it into hands, and you wash the leaf, allow it to take on moisture overnight, and then it gets rolled into bundles and pressed in an ex-bourbon barrel. And every 3 months, all of the tobacco gets pulled out of the barrel, and the bundles get, broken up, not like broken up, but they're pressed really tightly. You have to work them to loosen them back up, so expose them to oxygen again, and then it goes back into the barrel for another 3 months. This happens 3 times over the course of a barrel of Perique. It is a long, labor-intensive, totally non-mechanical process. The only way to do it is to do this by hand. There's not enough Perique here to really add a whole lot of Perique flavor, but the thing that I'm adding this for in this instance is because Perique is so heavily fermented and because it has such a unique fermentation character, it can actually act almost like a sourdough starter or something in a blend. It can kind of kickstart fermentation. So I wanted to add this just enough to actually help this blend over time as it cellars begin to ferment beyond what any of these leaves individually would be able to do on their own. So we got all of our components here, and like I said before, loosey-goosey, easy. I don't want to crush anything. I'm dealing with relatively dry tobacco, so we're going to add moisture to it here in a second. So I'll take my fingers and put it directly on the bottom of my table or my working surface. And you can see I'm just jazz hands, jazz fingers, just working everything together very gently. A lot of different colors, a lot of different colors of different leaves. And so I'm almost looking for like that kaleidoscope effect where I see even distribution of all of the different tones and shades of these different components equally mixed through. When you get a lot of different sizes of cuts or difference in textures, it can take a little bit of time to make sure you don't have a pocket of this or that thing hiding out. Believe it or not, it's actually more difficult to get even distribution with a smaller quantity, like blending a pound like this, than it is to make 50 or 60 pounds of something. Once everything is evenly distributed, I've got a very, very slightly sweet casing. This is honey, and a couple of different kinds of vodka that have neutral but sweet, sort of pillowy, soft flavors. Believe it or not, it's a whipped cream flavored vodka and a marshmallow flavored vodka. But the end result is not going to smell or taste like whipped cream and marshmallows. These are neutral and sort of nondescript sweeteners. They basically are there to add sort of a pillowy softness to the mouthfeel. And the vodka itself is going to evaporate very quickly, the alcohol will, and it'll leave these flavors kind of embedded in the leaves. There's also a little bit of honey in this. Add a small amount. I can begin to be a little faster and a little more aggressive. Just keep my fingers going constantly so I'm never crushing anything. I'm always coaxing it. I'm always just gently nudging the tobacco in the directions that I want it to go. Evenly distribute this moisture. But as the tobacco takes the moisture on, you can begin to feel it's a little more giving. It's not ever going to crush or crumble to dust with this blend. And it's when you add the moisture that you can really begin to smell like all of the different aromas that you put together kind of coming up at you, and the alcohol actually brings some of that out of this leaf and transfers it a little bit. You know, alcohol is a wonderful solvent, and so it can take oils and flavor compounds from one leaf and help to transfer it to other leaves. So the alcohol, while it's carrying the flavors of the casing and the effects of the casing, it's also helping to marry the flavors of the individual components to make up the blend. After a short period of time of just allowing the air dry back down to a smokable moisture, then I'll put this into this jar and we'll set it up by the counter just like we did the first two times. So you can actually taste what this blend tastes like basically straight off the table up at the front register. And then we had some tins from the Muletown mixture 2019. Unfortunately, those are all sold, but those of you who got them can taste a little bit of what happens to this blend with some time in a tin. And then we've got tins that are available blended earlier this month for this show. That's what we have. You guys have questions?
Is that the process that you would use back at C&D?
Yes, just on a much larger scale. But still the same concept and all done by hand.
All hand done?
Yes. Yeah, we don't have any mechanical blending. The differences that you would see are rather than a little plastic tub and blending a pound at a time, we have a table that's about the size of this. It's a steel tub. And so you can actually blend down the whole table. But yeah, still done by hand, still with the jazz fingers. Any other questions? You need alcohol as a carrier because if you use water as a carrier, then rather than really penetrating deeply into the leaf like alcohol can, it just kind of sits on the top of the lamina. Alcohol helps to really penetrate deep into the leaf and matriculate those flavors through the veins and the irrigation system of the leaf, the way that it transfers chlorophyll and moisture when it's in the ground growing. And so the end result is that those flavors are really, really married with the natural oils of the tobacco in a way that you wouldn't get if you use just water as a carrier. Also, alcohol, because of its lower boiling point, it flashes off more quickly. So you get back down to a usable moisture content much more quickly, and the flavors that you want get left behind in a more natural tasting way. Any other questions?
When you see like bourbon flavored tobacco, is that they usually use actual bourbon?
Yes. Yep. Now there are bourbon flavorings, and I'm sure that there are manufacturers that use them. But any time that we're using bourbon or vodka or anything like that, it's something that you can buy at the liquor store.
If this was to be tinned, what would be the next process?
So the next process, after you get it down to a moisture that you would want to tin it at, this is still a little wet for that. It'll be a little bit, maybe an hour or so before it's really ready to go into the jar. But at that point, you would tub it up into a container that can be transferred to our packaging department, which is the front portion of our building. And then the person would weigh out 2 ounces into a tin. They would put a tin insert, a lid on, and get all of the tobacco into tins with the tin insert and the lid stacked up next to our seaming machine that runs the seam around the top. And then it goes through that machine. It is date stamped. And then the next step is labels. And those are also applied by hand. So you use a glue stick, believe it or not. stack up, stagger like 10 or 12 labels and glue stick, and then one by one apply it to the tent, and it goes around like that, and then over caps, and then it gets packed into 36-count boxes and transferred to our distribution.
From batch to tin, how long does that normally take?
It depends on the size of the batch. It depends on a number of factors, but if we're talking about this blend, we started blending the Muletown mixture at the beginning of the week, and it was going into tins, I think, the middle of the week.
What's your opinion on, like, by C&D Virginia, how many years is it peak? And does it start to fall off after a certain number of years?
With Virginias, you can really expect long blends with most Virginia blends because they have a high natural sugar content. There's a lot of natural fuel there for fermentation to take place. You need sugar to be able to make alcohol. So with Virginias, I would say that kind of the sky's the limit. I mean, I'm not suggesting, oh yeah, it's going to peak at like 150 years. But I've definitely smoked, I mean, just last night, we had some cigarettes that someone shared with a group of us who was about 45 years old. And they were Virginia cigarettes, and they were delicious. Typically, I recommend 10 to 15 years for most Virginia or Virginia Freeze ones. That's also personal preference. The bulging is usually a good sign that there's fermentation that's taking place because of the byproduct of that is CO2. They do have air in them. So they're just seams. They are airtight, but they are not air. They haven't had any air removed. Off the top of my head, you would think that would be a number that I would just be able to spit out to you, but I actually don't have that firm number. It's for 225 that are C&D branded, and then we also have Peas and Briarworks and Two Friends and Captain Earls and Works. Make a lot of money.
So I hope you enjoyed that. It's really some great stuff. It's not necessarily home blending 101, and I hope to share some home blending 101 with you from a tobacconist here in the Dallas area very soon. But next week we have our Tobacco Tasters episode coming up, which is going to be the Amphora Original Blend. So make sure that you get your Amphora and share your thoughts with us when that video comes out next week. And then we'll have another video from Muletown to share with you with Sam Adebayo and his take on finishing a pipe. And there were some really interesting things in that one too that I learned that I could use even here at home with some of the pipes that I have. So next week, Amphora, the next Tobacco Tasters, not this one coming up next week, but the next one in April, we are going to do McBaron's Vanilla Cream. So you can either get that in bulk or you can get that in a tin. I bought both and I'm smoking both right now to get my impressions on it. So we'll be able to share that with you in April. Guys, hope those of you that went to Muletown had a great time. Thank you so much for you guys that came up and introduced yourself to me. That's really important to me. And I really had a great time meeting with you and talking to you and sharing our ideas about our great hobby. Make sure that you go out and have a great week. Don't forget, make all your piping moments count. We'll see you next time and have a great smoke.